meeting. Thank you for recording the meeting, Cynthia, for pushing that button. Join me in a salute to the flag, honoring all those who are serving our country now and in the past. We pledge allegiance.
The flag.
To the flag of the United
States of America.
And to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving into our agenda, 1.1, we have general public comments. I'm waiting for Cynthia to put our agenda up there. So at this time, the board invites comments on any items that do not appear in the agenda and are related to College of the Redwoods. You should comment on a specific agenda item when the board considers that item. Do we have any public comment? Hearing none, I'll move to agenda item 1.2, member comments.
President Mullery, may I?
Of course, Trustee Kelly.
I wanted to let the board know about a couple of things. One is I got notification that I have successfully completed my effective trusteeship certificate. So that'll be coming in the mail to the district. I have been enjoying the ACCT Legislative Conference, and I've been hearing some interesting things. I attended a great presentation this morning on NJCAA sports membership and the benefits that athletics really brings to a college in terms of not only revenue, but also student success and equity. Really fantastic program. And I'm interested in exploring it further and talking it over with President Flamer. You know, one of the colleges that was represented there talked about their rodeo team. And so, you know, the great city of Fortuna would love to see a program like that here at College of the Redwoods. So anyway, thanks everybody for your support as I've been working towards my effective trusteeship program. Thank you, Trustee Biggin, for being such an inspiration to this board regarding that program. And I look forward to continuing my education.
Thank you, Trustee Kelly, and congratulations on receiving your certificate. Are there any other member comments?
I have a comment.
Trustee Biggin.
Congratulations to Danny, and thank you for those kind words. Also, want to give Trustee Dorn credit for being a cheerleader for our effective trustee program. I wanted to be sure everybody saw the email that came out, I believe it was on Monday, where you can start to register for the League's conference in November. Again, I think I mentioned this before, but there are no fees involved. It'll be over 4 days, starting the 17th of November, and it starts around 11 each day and goes to maybe 2:30. There are caucus meetings after 2:30, between 2:30 and 4:30 for those who are interested. But it's a great opportunity to enroll, and it's open to more than just trustees. So, you know, maybe there's some staff or faculty or administrators that want to enroll. It is a conference that involves all of our constituent groups. It's not just trustees. So I wanted to make mention of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Biggin. Any other member comments? Aside from my cat, it's going to be put out shortly. Hearing none, I'm going to move to agenda item 1.3, board committee reports. I don't think we probably have any board committee reports. I thought I had all the critters under control. Hearing none, I'm going to move to agenda item 1.4, which is to appoint our ad hoc committee on nominations for board officers. This is what we do every year in our October meeting. As president, I am nominating 3 members to this committee: Trustee Emad, Trustee Biggin, and myself. These 3, this committee is asked to discuss a slate of board officers and for next year and present that slate to the board at our November meeting. Thank you, Trustee Emad and Trustee Biggin, for your willingness to serve on this important committee.
Pleasure.
That moves us to 1 point. Yes. Is there a question? Okay. Moving to 1.5, rescheduling our November meeting with the Board of Trustees. So this recommendation requests that the trustees approve moving the November 3rd regular meeting of the Board of Trustees to November 10th at 1:00 p.m.
I so move.
Next item,
I second it.
Any discussion needed? Hearing none. All those in favor of rescheduling the November board meeting, Cynthia, please take a poll.
Danny Kelly,
Yes.
Richard Dorn,
Yes.
Bruce Emad,
Yes.
Carol Matthews,
Yes.
Sally Biggin,
Yes.
Colleen Mullery. Colleen Mullery.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I was banishing a cat. Okay, here we go. Back. Thank you all. That moves us to agenda item 1.6, in which we are asking the board, do we have that up yet? Rescheduling the Board of Trustees organizational meeting to December 17th at 1:00 p.m. The explanation is in the background piece. Do we have a motion to?
I so move.
Is there a second?
I
Second.
Any discussion needed? Hearing none. Cynthia, will you please take a vote?
Danny Kelly,
Yes.
Richard Dorn,
Yes.
Bruce Emad,
Yes.
Carol Matthews,
Yes.
Sally Biggin,
Yes.
Colleen Mullery.
Yes. Thank you, Cynthia. That moves us to agenda item 1.7. The board will recall, and those who participated or listened in on our, because that would have been our September meeting, the board discussed a resolution expressing its disdain for any type of racism on our campus. I volunteered to write a resolution to that effect. In pulling together this resolution, I did note some of my sources at the end. I reviewed several resolutions that dealt with a similar topic. It was actually a very interesting exercise. So after looking at several resolutions and considering our own campus and our own needs, I've pulled together this resolution for consideration by my trustee colleagues. This is first read. I am very open to any discussion you might like to have regarding this resolution, in ways we can improve it or change it or revise it.
President,
I think I heard Carol, Trustee Matthews first, and then I'll go to Richard.
okay, thank you. I don't have any specific suggestion. I just wanted to express my support of the resolution as written, and to express my appreciation to President Mullery for spending the time to put it together.
Thank you, Trustee Matthews. Trustee Dorn.
I mean, I concur with Trustee Matthews, and I think you did an outstanding job. The title of it, really, when I first saw it, really took, I don't know, it sort of took me back.
Mm-hmm.
Against racism hit me, and I don't know why, it almost seemed negative to start with.
Okay.
And so that was my only comment, was just the title of it.
Oh, that's an interesting perspective, Trustee Dorn. I suppose, unless you have other suggestions, we could just flip that around.
That, you know, actually that's what when I first read it and sitting while looking at it again, I thought it was just you hit this huge, almost a negative thing to start off with in the title. It really took me back, but it's an outstanding piece of work, and if everybody else likes it, I'm great with it.
Is that a hand up, Trustee Imad? No, I think Trustee Imad was just touching his head. That's to keep your hands away from your face, Trustee Imad.
Yes, indeed. Sorry.
Trustee
President, yeah, so I would like to keep the words in there. I would be okay if we wanted to rearrange the order. But against racism, you know, I know that there's a big push with all of the negativity in our news these days to try to, you know, maybe focus on the positive. But at the same time, I think sometimes we need to unite ourselves under common causes that might actually be seen as, you know, maybe more of a negative bend. I'm not saying, I love the words in support of for an inclusive environment for all, and I'm fine leading with that. But I do think we need to keep the words against racism in there, because I think, you know, if you talk to any faculty member at the campus, nobody is in favor of racism. Nobody will openly claim to be in favor of racism. So I think we can actually all get aligned and behind the idea of being against racism together. And I think it's important for our college to do so.
So, yes, Trustee Imad.
Thank you, President Mallory. And just to add to Trustee Kelly's comments, by saying against racism in this resolution, we are not saying that we have racism in our college community. We're just saying that we are against it. And I think I agree with him. I think we should say that.
Yeah, I may jump in here. I don't think Trustee Dorn was suggesting we take it out.
No, I was not. I start off with a positive, and then, like I said, you could end with it against racism. It's just starting off with that.
Yeah, I
Trustee Mallory,
Biggin.
President Mallory.
Yeah, yes, Trustee Biggin. And you know, I'm looking for hands raised because that's helpful to me because I don't see you all. But let's go with Trustee Biggin, and I'll go back to Trustee Matthews.
I see the benefit of both viewpoints. I wonder if we had something like support for anti-racism and an inclusive environment for all. Would that work? I mean, to use anti-racism has the term rather than against racism somehow in the title.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I could go either way. Either way, it's fine with me, but it did sound like we were stepping out with a negative comment there, starting with the word against.
Trustee Matthews, you had a thought about all this.
My thought was just to reverse the order, because I was very happy to see at the beginning of the resolution the quote from the college's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee that clearly was a statement about inclusion. And I like that being part of our resolution. And so if we want to say in support for inclusive environment for all and against racism, I think that would be fine. I think you could also say in support of an inclusive environment and in support of anti-racism. Either one is fine with me.
I think we're reaching some consensus here, and I really appreciate your feedback on this. So what I'm hearing is a change in title where it's going to read something like, in support for an inclusive environment for all and against racism.
Right.
We can wordsmith that a little bit more, but that seems to be the direction we're going.
Good job.
Great job.
Thank you. Are there any other? Not, we will bring it back for a second and final read at our November meeting for a vote. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the feedback. That takes us to action item 1.7, I believe.
1.8.
Oh, 1.8, I'm looking at an older agenda here. Yes, yes. 1.8, this is our consideration and possible action to make permanent appointment to, excuse me, consideration and possible action to make permanent appointment to fill Area 5 vacancy on the Board of Trustees.
I was wondering, what's the process?
In moving this agenda item to the floor, I need a motion.
What's the total process, President Mullery?
Okay, I was actually going to discuss the process after we got this motion on the floor.
I'm sorry.
Move to consider.
I'm sorry, did I hear a motion?
Yes, it's Trustee Kelly. Motion to approve.
Well, we need, Colleen, I think we need to understand, don't we need to make a motion in nomination of somebody?
That is after we get it on the floor.
So what do we need to move that we
are going to consider and have a possible action to make a permanent appointment to fill Area 5 vacancy on the board. And then after that—
I so move.
I second.
I second it.
Okay.
Thank you. I realize this is confusing, and I'm really trying to make sure I'm going by the book on this, because this is all dictated by Education Code, specifically this particular resolution, Education Code 5091, which is a different code than we will be looking at when we move to agenda item 1.9. So we have it on the floor. The process is we have 3 candidates, or applicants, I should say, that the trustees interviewed at our special board meeting. I am going to ask if there is any trustee who would like to nominate one of these 3 community members to the Area 5 vacancy. And then I'll ask if there is a second to that nomination. If we have a first and a second on a nominee, then we will vote on that nominee. If we have a majority vote on that nominee, then we've made the appointment.
Dr. Mullery?
Trustee Matthews.
So we don't need to vote on the motion we just made to bring consideration to the floor?
Thank you, Trustee Matthews.
Okay.
Just when I said I wanted to make sure everything was going by the book. Let's take a, well, do we have to, no, we don't have to vote on that, Carol or Trustee Matthews. We have to vote on our vote for an applicant.
Okay.
Is there a discussion of the applicant once they're nominated? I'm sorry, Bruce.
Yes, yes, we may if we choose to. So would any of my trustee colleagues like to nominate any of these 3 applicants to fill the Area 5 trustee position?
Yes.
President Mullery.
Yes, Trustee Imad.
Thank you. If I may, I think that we were pretty fortunate to have very qualified applicants for that position. Having said that, in my opinion, Dr. Robertson stood far above the other 2. And so I'd like to nominate Dr. Rebecca Robertson for that position.
I second.
Now, is there discussion on this nomination of this applicant?
I concur with Trustee Imad.
Trustee Dorn.
I concur as well.
Call the question.
Trustee Kelly?
Oh, I was just hoping to call the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said you had a question.
No, sorry.
It appears that the board is ready to vote on appointing Dr. Rebecca Robertson to fill the Area 5 position as a trustee for College of the Redwoods. Cynthia, would you please take a vote?
Annie Kelly,
Yes.
Richard Dorn,
Yes.
Bruce Imad,
Yes.
Carol Matthews,
Yes.
Sally Biggin,
Yes.
Colleen Mullery.
Yes. I would like to say at this point something that we said.
I'll be through in just a minute.
It needs to be on mute. Thank you. I was just so pleased that we had such qualified applicants for actually both vacant seats. So I want to thank all applicants for their willingness to participate in this process. Each were very qualified. Each had very unique talents that they would bring to the Board of Trustees. We can only bring one to the board, and I want to congratulate Dr. Robertson for being the successful applicant. And again, thank you all for participating in the process. Dr. Robertson will be sworn in as a trustee at the December organizational meeting.
President Mullery. Sorry, just as student trustee, I just also wanted to say that that was my intention also, was to nominate and vote for her as well. Thank you.
That's going to move us to agenda item 1.8, which
1.9.
is 1.9. See, I had an earlier agenda that didn't include our racism. So thank you. I'm sorry. Now I got the correct one. Let me just trash this other one. 1.9, the consideration and possible action to make a provisional appointment to fill Area 1 vacancy on the Board of Trustees per Education Code 5328. Can we get this motion?
I so move.
Second.
Okay.
President Mullery?
Yes, Christina.
Is a nomination appropriate now?
Certainly.
Okay, then I would like to move that we appoint Mr. Tracy Copini to fill the Area 1 vacancy.
I'd like to second that.
We have a first and a second on this nomination. Is there any discussion of this?
I do. I agree.
I think I hear Trustee Kelly.
Thank you, President Mullery. I agree with my colleagues that we have had some fine folks step forward for Slate, and really appreciate people coming, stepping up and coming back and talking about this. My concerns with appointing Trustee Imad is, excuse me, to Mr. Copini, excuse me, is that, you know, we have had a huge emphasis on effective trusteeship in our college that has happened since his tenure on the board. And, you know, there was a whole length of time where he served on the board and did not ever pursue that. The other emphasis that we have here on the board related to student success is equity. And I think that we have an opportunity here with this slate of candidates for Area 1 to make an appointment that would reflect our goals and our future direction on equity and inclusion. We have a young applicant, a person of color, someone who understands College of the Redwoods as a student that I think that we should consider before making an appointment with Mr. Copini. There's also the issue of the fact that the voters in that area had made a decision on Mr. Copini during the last election. Thank you.
President Mullery?
Matthews.
Yes, I anticipated those remarks, and they are highly appropriate. I believed in his interview that Mr. Copini committed to doing the effective trusteeship program if he was appointed. My strongest reason for this appointment is that we have so many challenges right now with the college, financial, et cetera, of course, and COVID, and we would so benefit. We're going to have new trustees as it is. We would so benefit by having Mr. Copini's experience and his ability to step onto the board without a long period of learning the board's role and operations and information about the college. In 2 years, this position is up for re-election, or up for election. And at that time, Mr. Copini could choose to run or not. And if he runs, there would be an election and the voters would decide. But at this point, I'm highly persuaded by his ability to step onto the board and service at this particular time.
President Mullery, I was right behind Danny.
Oh, I am sorry, Trustee Dorn. So I'll go, I'm not seeing hands, my hand raising thing isn't working here. I'm going to go to Trustee Dorn and then I'll go to Trustee Imad.
Thank you.
So some of my concerns, I mean, I really appreciate Mr. Copini's service of 20 years on the board. In 20 years, I don't believe he ever went to a conference. But I am concerned with what Trustee Kelly said, the election. Those voters in that district voted against him and did not re-elect him. If we appoint him, we are almost slapping every one of those voters in the face, telling them that we don't appreciate the political process. And that really bothers me, that those voters, and that was a very expensive lesson. The other comment I have is similar to Trustee Kelly, but more so. We have two very well qualified candidates that represent diversity. We as a board have been preaching that the college needs to be more diversified. We even made that one of President Flamer's goals. And I'm not sure the board didn't make it as a goal. So we have two candidates that represent that, and we're not going to vote them in, one of them. Why do we have a goal for the president of diversity? I'm sorry, that's just my thought. Thank you.
Trustee Imad.
Thank you. There are a couple of points that I'd like to address here. One, in terms of the other two candidates, and I agree with both Trustee Dorn and Trustee Kelly about their status as people of color and minorities. Candidate Fernandez, as far as I'm concerned, disqualified himself when he answered one of your questions regarding the issue of how would you interact with the board and board's decision. And his response was that after the board has voted, and if I voted differently on that issue, and I'm quoting him now, they can ask me why I voted the way I voted. I'll be happy to meet with them and explain my position. That, to me, is an absolute dead end. I cannot support that. As far as the other gentleman is concerned, I found him to be very qualified, very personable, but he has only lived in Humboldt County since last October. And so 1 year in the county is just not enough. And number three, both Trustee Kelly and Trustee Dorn talk about the last election. The last election in Area 1 was riddled with lies and allegations against the board and falsehoods and misrepresentation. And as Trustee Matthews pointed out, 2 years from now, those folks will have an opportunity to vote for a new candidate or re-elect Trustee Copini. And as far as Trustee Copini's commitment to Trustee Excellence program, that during his tenure, that was not a board policy. It is a board policy now, and he has committed to completing that. So I'm very comfortable supporting Trustee Copini.
Are there?
Trustee Mullery?
Yes, yes, Trustee Biggin.
Okay, thank you. I think some good points have been brought up, and I certainly am committed to the issue of diversity and every chance we get looking at diverse applicants and giving them very serious consideration. But my concerns of our two diverse candidates here are similar to Trustee Imad's concerns. The one gentleman who's only lived here since October doesn't really understand the community and will be at a disadvantage in helping us look at policies that meet the needs of the community. The other concern I have about the candidate that's currently on the board for Eureka City Schools is the fact that if he was the successful candidate here, he would have to resign his position for Eureka City, which could put them in an awkward situation of having to replace him, you know, probably through a similar way that, you know, we're in the process of replacing a trustee. But I almost feel like we would be stealing him away from one of our partner districts. I don't know how that superintendent or board feels about the fact that, you know, he is looking to leave the district and would prefer to work with a community college district rather than a K-12 district. But I hate to be a part of separating a board or putting another board at a disadvantage. And I don't see that he has the strength or the maturity that Mr. Copini has as a candidate. And the other, I guess the last comment I want to make in terms of diversity, I think if you were to talk to Mr. Copini, and I think some of it came out in the interview, he is a successful entrepreneur in the agricultural field. He employs many people from diverse backgrounds. I believe he even has diversity in his immediate family in terms of, you know, either son-in-laws or daughter-in-laws or whatever. So, you know, I think he is sensitive to the issue of diversity and brings the institutional memory to the table that I'm concerned about if Trustee Mullery and myself are not successful in our re-election. The board is losing a lot of institutional memory, and I like to see that at the table. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
President Mullery?
Yes, Trustee.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to lower my digital hand. I wanted to talk about the idea of not selecting someone whose resume seems eminently qualified for this position just because he's relocated here recently. I also relocated to the area before I ran. Was fairly new to it, but I dove in head first. I did my best to learn. I did my best to collaborate with my colleagues. My own personal strength of character led to my ability to be a successful trustee on this board. And I think that I have brought a lot of value to this board, and I would hope that my colleagues would agree. So in terms of, you know, a person relocating to the area recently and that being a disqualifier, I would ask us to reconsider that. You know, I agree with Trustee Biggin in many of the points that she made about the value of Mr. Copini's experience with the college. I'm very grateful to Mr. Copini for coming back and for throwing his hat in the ring, which, you know, I would imagine would have been a personally difficult thing for me to do, given the circumstances of the election outcome. And so I really respect that. And the idea of his long institutional awareness being useful at a time like this, when we are facing two other trustees that are running for election, and the fact that we're facing an unprecedented global pandemic crisis where, you know, you may have to be thinking creatively outside the box, but not lose sight of the history before you make a radical decision. That all makes sense to me. And honestly, my conversation with Mr. Copini months ago led me to believe him to be an intelligent and deliberative individual. So, you know, I could support the board's vote in favor of Mr. Copini if it goes that way. However, I do believe that we have an opportunity here to do something different. Having a trustee with wildland fire experience and connections throughout the state would certainly benefit this college, as would having Mr. Copini with his connections in the agricultural world would benefit our agricultural programs. So I think it's a really, you know, it's a really tough decision here. But I think given that we have, I was ready to vote for Mr. Copini if no other candidates presented themselves, but given the fact that Mr. Rubalcaba presented with such high qualifications, I'm going to have to reserve my vote in favor of that person.
So I call for a question, please.
Well, no, I would like to say something.
I'd like to chime in a little bit. I'm the only
President Mullery
spoken to this, but I'll go to Trustee Dorn first.
I just want to say I disqualifying a candidate because he's only lived in the county for a year almost seems discrimination. I mean, my family's been here 120 years, my wife's family 160 years, and I would appreciate somebody that's been here a year with a different perspective, just like Trustee Kelly. All because somebody's lived in the county for 20, my father-in-law used to say you aren't a Humboldt County citizen unless you've lived here 50 years. You know, I'm really surprised this board's looking at it that way. That I think that Eric could really bring some interesting perspectives to the board. We need something different. This board has been striving the last couple of years to get out of its box. And, you know, those two candidates, and especially Eric, gives us that opportunity along with diversity. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Dorn. If I might just share my point of view, and then I think I did hear possibly calling the question unless someone else has something to say. Where I'm coming from on this matter.
Sherlock's any good?
I'm sorry, someone should be on mute. It's not how long someone has lived in the county or whether or not the person is a diversity candidate. Kind of goes back to something that Trustee Matthews said earlier, but it is the way that I've looked at this. We're losing Trustee Imad because he's retiring from the board after many, many years of service. Each of us brings certain strengths and competencies to the board, and that's what makes our board so strong. And we have strengths in different areas that complement one another. One of Trustee Imad's outstanding strengths was his grasp of financial matters, and we are going to lose that. It's not to say that the rest of us are not all well aware of the budget and budgetary matters, but I believe that Trustee Imad was the trustee who had the strongest command, given his background in matters of finance and budget. As a consequence, and also because this is a provisional appointment that will be up for a vote in 2 years, I was persuaded by Trustee Copini, or excuse me, Mr. Copini's interest in returning to the board. My experience with Mr. Copini serving on the board with him was that he was highly competent and highly insightful in all matters related to the budget. Other matters as well, but that was one of his areas of strengths. Our other 2 applicants also have very strong competencies. Both are qualified for this position. However, given this point in time, and given the fact that we are looking at a provisional appointment where voters will have an opportunity in 2 years to reconsider who should serve as a trustee from Area 1, I am in favor of bringing Mr. Copini back to the board. But that is where I'm coming from. It's not looking at any weaknesses or concerns about the other 2 candidates, or excuse me, applicants, but rather looking at our board and which of these 3 applicants can provide a very important competency and strength to the deliberations of the board. So that's where I'm coming from in this matter. Are there any other comments regarding this?
I have one.
Yes, Ms. Peters.
As the student trustee, I feel like this is a new culture for me, being involved in the board, College of the Redwoods. I am a student. I'm on my 5th year as a student here. Have received 4 college degrees. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I just wanted to share my opinion because I feel like my opinion is maybe a fresh view. And I'm in Del County representing all 3 campuses, including Humboldt County. I don't know the history of Mr. Copini because I'm not a resident of Humboldt County. And so I just wanted to touch base on that a little bit because like I said, I have a different perspective and I just want to share that. So thank you for listening. I believe that it's important to take a look at our students' successes and to look into the future about how can we incorporate new structure to support our students and their successes. We're in a very difficult time right now with COVID. Being the student trustee, I've had students reach out to me and I don't have answers. So I've been, faithfully researching and trying to figure out answers on my own because once I understand, then I can help them. I'm new to this and I'm learning, but I'm very passionate about what I'm doing. And I believe that one of our candidates that we have that is new to the area has that passion. I saw that passion. It was an extensive day during interviews and it stuck out to me because I think that passion is so very important as a trustee and especially for our students. I have that passion for our students and I think that each trustee has that also and I saw that in him. I think that he can bring a new outlook to our community. He had mentioned that his wife is from this area and I think that he is willing to go the distance to learn. And it's not just about our Humboldt County family. We have 2 other campuses and we have a huge family in those 3 campuses combined. And I think that having a trustee who looks at all those diversity in all those campuses, we have a huge Native American population that I don't feel is strongly represented. And I think that there's like a smaller window here, because I keep hearing Humboldt County and all the great things that are happening there, but I don't really hear a lot about the other campuses and the other communities. And I just would like to share that I embrace new visions, and that's why I support him in the nomination.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. Very much appreciate your comments and your insights. Are there any other comments? In reviewing where we are at this point, we have Mr. Tracy Copini being nominated and seconded to fill the vacant position created by Dr. Bonnie Deister's resignation from the board. This would be a provisional appointment, and it would actually start today. The successful applicant will be sworn in immediately, because Education Code requires that these types of vacancies be filled within 60 days of the vacancy. At this point, we will vote for the applicant who has been nominated and seconded. If that applicant gets a majority vote, he will be the successful applicant. That is the process. And again, the process is very much dictated by Education Code 5328. Are we ready to vote on Mr. Tracy Copini being a successful applicant to replace Dr. Bonnie Deister as trustee for Area 1, this provisional appointment? Hearing no further discussion, Cynthia, would you please take a roll call vote?
Danny Kelly,
No.
Richard Dorn,
No.
Bruce Emod,
Yes.
Carol Matthews,
Yes.
Sally Biggin,
Yes.
Colleen Mullery.
Yes. Thank you all for that discussion. It was an important discussion, and I certainly appreciated everyone's point of view. I do, again, want to thank all of the applicants for this position. All of the applicants were qualified. All of them had important skills. We can only appoint one at this time. This is a provisional appointment. So congratulations, Mr. Copini. Is Mr. Copini on the line?
Yes.
Mr. Copini, can you unmute your...
Yes, could you hear me?
Yes. Mr. Copini, congratulations. You are the successful applicant to fill this provisional appointment for Area 1. Are you ready to take the oath of office?
Yeah, first I'd like to thank the board for supporting this decision and for the discussion. And I don't think you'll be disappointed.
Thank you. I'm going, as president of the board, I will be administering the oath of office, Mr. Copini. If you'll just repeat after me, please. I, in your name, do solemnly swear.
I, Tracy Copini, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
To the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
To the Constitution of the United States and to the Constitution of the State of California.
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
I will and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties of what I'm about to enter.
Thank you, Mr. Capini, and congratulations and welcome to the Board of Trustees.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome aboard.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That moves
Okay.
us. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, excuse me. So do I participate in the rest of this agenda or?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
I recognize that you might not be as prepared as you might like to be, but again, we checked this today with the elections office as to whether or not we were obligated to actually swear in this provisional appointment immediately, and we were.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for your understanding. That moves us. Goodness, we had a lot of board business, didn't we? Only into the consent calendar. That moves us into the consent calendar. Any trustee may remove an item from the consent calendar for further discussion. Would any of my trustee colleagues like to remove a consent calendar action item? Trustee Kelly.
2.3 and 2.4, please.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Hearing none, we will be voting on the consent calendar items 2.1, 2.2, 2.5, and 2.6.
I move approval.
Second.
Cynthia, would you take a vote?
Danny Kelly,
Yes.
Richard Dorn,
Yes.
Bruce Emod,
Yes.
Carol Matthews,
Yes.
Sally Biggin,
Yes.
Tracy Copini,
Yes.
Colleen Mullery.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia. Trustee Kelly, you pulled 2.3.
Yes, and I just want to slide in and take a moment because there's no good space for this, but Mr. Copini, welcome aboard, and you've got my support as a member of this board.
Thank you.
So 2.3, I had a question for Dr. Flamer regarding Michael Perkins. I was curious, we've been going through the community forums on policing, and I was curious if Mr. Perkins has had any exposure to that, or if he's aware of that, and also your perspective on this person's fit based on what you've been experiencing through the community forums on policing, Dr. Flamer.
Thank you. We had questions at the screening committee level about his background in terms of looking at police academy curriculum. So that was forefront of our minds as we were doing the interview process. And he sailed through that very well with his answers. And secondly is that we actually had him and all the candidates meet with the advisory committee. So we invited the law enforcement chiefs as well as the ad hoc members of the advisory committee to interview these final two candidates. And I have the feedback from those groups. So that went well as well. And his background, which I sent to the board, I believe yesterday, he's well versed at not only policing himself in terms of being a lieutenant and a sergeant on the streets, if you will, but he teaches with Allen Hancock College now in their police academy. And he understands, and we talked about what pressures that our police cadets are going through, and also the pressures that each department is going through to hire the right cadets but also he's well aware of the changes that are needed, potential changes that are needed in how we educate our cadets. He knows that our cadets are asked to do so many things so quickly when they get done with us, and he knows that we have a lot of work to do and really reviewing and revising our curriculum for inclusion, but also to make sure that our cadets are trained to be community officers and not police officers.
Thank you, Dr. Flamer. As always, you're 5 steps ahead and on the things that are most important to college. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Trustee Kelly, would you like to go ahead and ask your question about 2.4, and then we can...
Well, on 2.4, I just need to abstain because of a financial interest of the connection to an employee of Whitchurch Engineering.
Okay.
President Mullery?
Yes, Trustee Dorn.
I was going to pull 2.4 as well.
Okay. Please share your comments or questions.
The first one was on the solar. Where did you end up negotiating the solar arrays to go?
Dr. Mullery, may I take that?
Yeah, I certainly can.
Oh, thank you. I just want. I always want to ask your permission.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I should have asked you.
So, Trustee Dorn, that's a great question. We followed up. Julia, Vice President Morrison, and I, and Steve McKenzie followed up at the last board meeting with a meeting with the Forefront folks. I think that they're on the line too. So we actually went through on some potential locations. So we are going to put it in the parking lot area, but we also we're going to push it down so we have more green space where the vacant buildings are going to be. So where originally the board may have seen that we were going to take over, put the solar array where the old library used to be, was located, but we've changed that. So the old library, the vacant land will be able to be used for whatever ag initiatives that we have or any other initiatives that we have going forward. But also with the old life science and physical science building, that will also be green space, or we can reallocate that space to other college needs. So we just pushed it down further toward the parking lot and toward the street, but also taking over part of the parking lot that's down by the redwood log area.
Do you have further questions, Trustee Dorn?
And I was curious about the leasing for the cattle, the lease for the cattle.
And I'm okay. I guess I don't know what that pertains to the solar contract.
Well, they don't. They're 2 different contracts.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't know that you changed tracks with me. So tell me exactly what your question is, Trustee Dorn.
So on the cattle leasing,
to Dennis Chisholm.
Yeah. So is that through the farm, or what's the scoop with that?
Vice President Morrison, are you on the line? Can you answer that question?
Sure, I'm here. It's actually going to be leasing a portion of the Eureka campus property, Chisholm, for his cattle to graze.
Okay.
Which is similar to
the opposite. Thank you.
It's very similar to what we already do.
Okay.
Are there further questions on items 2.3 and 2.4? If not, I'll ask for a motion to approve those.
Could you make that 2 separate motions, please?
Sir, oh, of course, because we have a conflict of interest.
I move approval of 2.3.
Is there a second for 2.3?
Second.
I second it.
Cynthia, would you please take a roll call?
Danny Kelly,
Yes.
Richard Dorn,
Yes.
Bruce Emod,
Yes.
Carol Matthews,
Yes.
Sally Biggin,
Yes.
Tracy Copini,
Yes.
Colleen Mullery.
Yes. Thank you, Cynthia. Is there a motion to move 2.4 or to vote on 2.4?
I move to approve 2.4.
Second.
Cynthia, would you please do the honors?
Danny Kelly,
Abstain.
Richard Dorn,
No.
Bruce Emod,
Yes.
Carol Matthews,
Yes.
Sally Biggin,
Yes.
Tracy Copini,
Yes.
Colleen Mullery.
Yes. Thank you, Cynthia. That moves us to section 3 of our agenda, action discussion items, specifically 3.1. I'll wait for, there it is. I have to clean up my screen here. So 3.1, which is our approval of the monthly financial status report. Is there a motion to get this on the table?
I move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. President Flamer, would you like to provide any additional background to this?
No, I think it's pretty self-explanatory unless the board has any specific questions that Vice President Morrison and I can answer.
I have, President Mullery?
Yes, please, Trustee Matthews.
I just have an informational question under the purchase orders. Can you tell me what, or remind me perhaps, what the college rapid rehousing program is?
Vice President Morrison, you want to take that, or did you want me to try?
Go ahead and give it a go.
Certainly. So that is part of the Grove program that we have. So
okay.
We have $500,000 for the next 3 years that we can rapidly, if you will, house students, not just on this campus, but in our community. And so we have money set aside just for that purpose.
So that's to help them get into housing?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And if I may, speaking to our student trustees' point, that would also be applicable to students on all 3 campuses, correct, President Flamer?
Yes, both campuses and the instructional side at KT, yes.
Thank you.
Right, I had a question.
Yes, Trustee Dorn.
So on the financial sheet, I was curious about the enrollment fees and the non-resident tuition. And so I know our enrollment's down. Are you going to be making an adjustment out for that in the future? Or what is your plan to that maybe in the spring we'll catch up some of that? Or what's your thought?
Vice President Morrison, you want to take that specifically? I'll take generally.
Sure. So I think the one thing to point out is that this year, as is different from prior years, we didn't really get to implement one reg where students can register for the full academic year. Currently, they were able to register for fall term. And the other piece to this is, yes, that the enrollment that we've received so far is less than at this point in time last year because of a lower FTES. But I do believe that the estimate that is there, and this did come from the state, does reflect a lower enrollment number.
And the same with the non-resident, because that's way off, right? Noticing.
Yes, I believe that the same 2 factors are affecting non-resident. Again, we're not seeing that full academic year registration, and we're also seeing a decline in enrollment.
Thank you.
President Flamer, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Are there further questions? Cynthia, would you please take a vote?
Danny Kelly.
Yes.
Richard Dorn.
Yeah.
Bruce Emod.
Yes.
Carol Matthews.
Yes.
Sally Biggin.
Yes.
Tracy Copini.
Yes.
Colleen Mullery.
Yes. Thank you, Cynthia. We next move to a first read of administrative procedures. We'll wait for
Move to approve.
Second.
It's not.
It's not an action item.
Oh.
Move to discuss.
I have one, President Mullery.
yes.
may I give some background, Dr. Mallory?
Yes.
Yes.
Prior to, all of these APs were created either last spring, but also some of them we had to put in as an interim to make sure that the district was adhering or had the right APs in place in regarding to COVID, and also with policing. So you have several interims in as a first read that I had to put in really quickly and went back through College Council process, which is what our agreed upon process. That's my only background, Dr. Mullery.
Actually, that goes to a question that I had regarding this, why we were discussing both interims and permanent. So the interims are different from the markups? I mean, they're both numbered, like, for example, one of the numbers is actually wrong on this sheet. So let's go with 6570. There's AP 6570, and then there's markup AP 6750.
Yes, based on the past, the board always wanted to see not just the new policies or APs, but the old ones. So we juxtaposed these. So that's why both are included. So really, what we're looking at are the interims and not so much the regular AP, like AP 6570 versus the interim 6570.
I think she was noticing the transposed numbers.
That's the executive assistant's error.
Yeah, and so let's go to 6520 because those numbers are correct. I had noticed the transposed numbers earlier and I just picked the wrong one. So we'll be looking at both the interim and then the, I guess, the permanent 6520 when we go into a vote on this at our next meeting. It just seemed odd to me that we were looking at both an interim as well as a markup. But if you're tracking it, President Flamer, then it's probably right.
Cynthia and I are tracking by word very closely.
Okay.
President Mullery?
Yes, Trustee Matthews.
I was just, the one thing I noticed was that on AP 3836, the first one on the list, collection of Native American baskets, district loan policy.
Yes.
At the very bottom of the policy, the last bullet says, the museum or gallery that exhibits the objects. It doesn't seem to me like a complete thought. I'm not sure what's the rest of that sentence is supposed to be.
Oh, good catch.
We will revise that as we look back at it.
Okay.
Thank you for that observation.
We have
President Mullery?
Yeah, Trustee Kelly.
I may, thank you. And Dr. Flamer, forgive my ignorance if I don't understand how the process works, but regarding AP 4090, the course substitution policy, is it such that students are only ever asking for course substitution in the pursuit of a particular degree or certificate? I guess I was wondering why there was a requirement to declare a specific degree or certificate focus if maybe you had a student who was only intending on taking community college courses for the purposes of transferring to another college.
If Gary Sokolow or Dr. Hill are on the line, can you answer Trustee Kelly's question, Angelina?
I'm sorry. Can you please repeat the question? I didn't completely follow. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's probably because I don't understand what I'm talking about. On the policy AP 4090, there's a requirement in there that a student declare a degree or certificate focus before they can apply for course substitution. And I guess I was wondering, what do you do about students who maybe don't have a particular degree or certificate in mind, but they are attending our college in hopes of transfer and want to be able to ask for course substitution to get through, say, some requirements that maybe they were qualified for otherwise?
That totally makes sense. And it's really interesting that you asked this today, because I had a meeting yesterday with the deans, the counselors, the articulator, evaluator, and registrar's office staff to discuss our process for evaluating work coming from other colleges, and it resulted in us talking about whether or not we have a policy for evaluation. And I needed to look into it. I don't believe that we do, but I believe that we need one if we don't, to lay out this process, because it's been, as Trustee Matthews knows, she probably knows a lot more about it than I do, but it's been problematic because the counselors engage in it in one way, the deans and directors engage in it in another way, and the registrar's office engages in it in another way, and the students will hit into all those different people and get different answers from all those different people. It really needs to always go back to the registrar's office. But anyway, that's way too much detail. But along the lines of what you're asking, it comes down to how much resources we have available to do this work. So we have one evaluator. And then we have another person who does a little bit of evaluation stuff as well, but she's our articulation officer. She does a lot of other things. So they can only do so much. So that's why it would be great if we could evaluate everybody's work as it comes in, but we just don't have the resources, unfortunately, to do that. So we have to prioritize. So we decide that those who have declared a degree and know what it is that they want evaluated into, that we're going to prioritize them. Also, if they haven't declared a degree, then it's very difficult for us to know how to articulate stuff unless it's general education, right? So normally they'll articulate the gen ed if they can, if they have time. Does that make sense?
It does, thank you.
Thanks. President Mallory?
Yes, Trustee Matthews.
I think also part of that answer is what's stated at the bottom of the policy, that if a student is asking for a course substitution to meet a requirement of a school they hope to transfer to, then it's that school that has to make the course substitution acceptance. Mm-hmm. In other words, the College of the Redwoods can't say, yes, OSU will accept this course. That has to be.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to add, and that's a really good, important point, Trustee Matthews. Thank you for that. Like I said, I think you're much more knowledgeable about this stuff than I do. But at any rate, I wanted to add where we ended up in that conversation is I reached out to our vendor who provides our solution for a degree audit. And we are going to ask for, I'm thinking it's going to end up around $50,000, but I'm not quite sure, in grant. We're going to put it into a grant so that we can get that company to help us build out our, we have a bit of things programmed in the degree audit now, but certainly not everything, because you have to program it separate for every college or university that you want it to articulate to. And so we're going to build that out. And it might take us a little more time, but we really need to do it, because then it's always automated and you don't have to have a human trying to figure out if it articulates or not.
Further.
Colleen, you're muted.
No, I'm not.
Now you're not.
Oh. I should not have been. But in any event, I was just asking if there were any further questions for this discussion item, and if not, we see this again in November, I guess, or whenever President Flamer thinks they're ready for us for a second read.
Actually, they're APs.
Oh, they're APs. Yeah, but you're still worthy of a second read, I'm assuming. We called this a first read. Okay. Let's move to 4.1, our informational reports. Student success data update on fall enrollment. This is not an action item. President Flamer, is there anything you'd like to say about this?
Thank you. The board, I did make a commitment to the board to provide at census what the fall enrollment looked like. And as we predicted, we're 20% down head count in FTS, However, the good part is that, the good piece of this is that our efficiency rate, which is our fill rate, was up to about 80%. In the past, it's been 72. 80% has been our target for 13 years to get our efficiency rate up this high. And COVID actually allowed us to do this. What I'm going to do is at the end of the semester, give a much more detailed enrollment report, not just overall headcount and FTS, but have it broken down by subgroup and have a projection of what we may look like in spring, because we'll have fall enrollment. Students will be able to enroll in spring by the time I bring this back to the board for more detail. And that's the only thing I have, Dr. Mallory.
Any questions for President Flamer regarding this?
No, President Mallory.
I see Trustee Kelly, and then I'll go to Trustee Copini.
Well, I didn't have any questions for Dr. Flamer, but I do want to encourage my colleagues to check out the amazing data visualizations on the institutional effectiveness dashboard. If you all haven't checked that out, you should. It really gives us some great perspective on how the college is doing against some of these metrics.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I'm moving to Trustee Copini. I think I saw his hand up.
Yeah. Thank you, President Mallory. Yeah, that was part of my question. I obviously don't have the data in front of me, but how are we doing relative against colleges our size, rural districts? Are we pretty close?
We are just right in line, Trustee Copini, with what our sister institutions rurally are going through. Some schools, like Compton and other schools, they're down significantly more than we are. And it's the same across the nation. Some schools are down 5% and some two-year schools are down 40%. It just depends on the area, but overall across the country, we're seeing a decrease in community college enrollment.
Just a thought, I wonder when we get through this, if it'll, make up for lost time, so to speak, for the low enrollment. Do we have any data or anything that we could lean on projections in the future?
It really will depend upon what our COVID and the virus lockdown, and how community colleges and colleges are dealing with the virus situation. If we're allowed to add more face-to-face courses, then our enrollment will naturally grow, because we all know that with the pandemic, so many of our students who are on the margins just either cannot learn online or are just not able to take the courses. And I think when we give more access opportunity, our enrollment will increase. But also coupled with that access increase and with a solid face-to-face component of our institution, I think students who have to work will be able to better plan their educational plans and moving forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Biggin.
Thank you. I wondered if there is the ability to disaggregate any of those numbers in terms of ethnicity. Do we have any particular population of students that's been more impacted than others?
It's hard for me to say right now, because the numbers aren't very solid, because we have some late start courses that have yet to be counted. So if it's okay, I'd like to reserve my answer until I have more solid data for the board.
Okay, and then besides ethnicity, how about gender? I just wonder if women or female students have been more impacted than male students because of having to be at home with younger kids and family members that aren't able to be in school. I would be curious about that type of an impact.
Yeah, I am too. I'm following that pretty closely, because I'm wondering if the pandemic is kind of switching our assumption, because we have a lot of males stuck at home as well because of work. So I'm curious to see how the pandemic has affected our male to our gender percentages as well.
Thank you.
Hearing no further questions, are we ready to move to organizational reports? Apparently we are. We'll start out with our Academic Senate report. President Gary Sokolow, are you available to give your report?
I am. I really thank you, President Mullery. The report here is pretty much what's been going on with the Academic Senate. We had a faculty forum about a couple of weeks ago, sort of an all-faculty forum, and I think it was a good thing. It gave people a chance to, for lack of a better term, blow off steam, because, you know, we hadn't had one in a while, and with the coronavirus going around, you know, we're more isolated than ever before at our own homes or workspace. So I think that was a healthy thing. And there was some discussion, and we're talking with CRFO to see if we can do sort of every month, every other month, that we've done some years ago, joint CRFO faculty forum talks. So, you know, forums with both the Senate and CRFO just to discuss areas of mutual concern in just an open, very informal environment. So the other material is as you see here. So unless anybody has questions, I really have nothing else to add.
Well, I really appreciate the written report, and thank you for providing some additional background to that. Are there any questions for Dr. Sokolow?
President Mullery?
Yes, Trustee Kelly.
Thank you. Point 2 in your report, I'm curious if you have any anecdotal information about what the issues are specifically related to internet access with students. I enjoy attending the rural caucuses at the National Legislative Conference for colleges for the, the rural districts. And, you know, this seems to be one of their top priorities as affecting rural colleges. And I guess I continue to be kind of confused. Is it, in our region, is it broadband issues? Is it something where, you know, the infrastructure necessary to make reliable connection isn't there? Is it poverty where students can't afford devices or tools that they need to stay connected? What are you guys hearing as faculty?
Well, I'm not a techno geek, so I'll do the best I can here. The anecdotal things I've been hearing, Trustee Kelly, are like people like even here in Eureka, you know, having to go to the parking lot of the school to be able to connect up. We seem to have a pretty decent wireless system on campus, and I'm thankful the administration and whoever for that. I've been hearing that. I've been hearing people who live out in the really rural areas, perhaps such as Klamath, Trinity, and other places. You know, it's simply hard to get a decent connection. And I will tell you that I've heard for at least 5-6 years, both because I've asked our IT staff and other folks who are in the know about this, that it seems in some of these rural areas that the internet service providers or the phone companies aren't terribly willing to extend service where there's, I suppose, a low customer density per square mile. Kind of like the old rural electric thing many years ago, stringing electric lines. But it's been a combination of all those things. And I will say, and Angelina, Dr. Hill, or others might have more updated information, but I remember, at least as of a few weeks ago, it didn't seem access to the hardware for our students, because the last report I remember from a meeting some weeks ago is the college bought about 250 Chromebooks and configured them for students who couldn't buy the equipment themselves in this environment we're in. And there were a lot of them that were not used. That is, there were a lot of them that remained to be loaned out to people. And I know we have it all on our webpage, so there may be some updated information on that. So it really seems to be a combination of all those things. It's like not any one thing, but clearly the message, at least I've heard, and some of my fellow faculty members have heard, is that this coronavirus has sort of exposed raw these issues that we all sort of take for granted in a so-called normal world. I'm sorry for a long-winded answer there.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Response, thank you. Hearing no further questions, I'll move to 5.2, and this is our CRFO organizational report from President Michelle Haggerty. Professor Haggerty, are you available?
I am, yes, hello.
You. Is there anything that you would like to add to this report or provide additional background?
I guess I'll just say to add on to Professor Sokolow's statement that CRFO in the Senate, the leadership always meets regularly so that we can work together on issues that come up for the college, and then, you know, working conditions issues are CRFO's area. And I think that meeting, you know, I mentioned that too. I think it was very much needed for the faculty. I think a lot of our faculty are feeling isolated in a similar way that our students are feeling isolated. So people are being creative on how to connect with each other. And I think we're going to need to continue to do that to support faculty.
Yes, indeed. Any questions for Professor Haggerty? Thank you, Professor Haggerty. Appreciate your report and your providing additional background.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
That moves us to 5.3, our report. Is President Tammy Engman on the line?
I'm here.
Hello. Would you like to provide any additional background or say anything additional regarding your report? And again, thank you for providing a written report. We appreciate it.
No problem. I don't have anything additional to add other than welcoming our new trustee Robertson and then welcoming trustee Capini back to the board.
Thank you, Ms. Engman. Hearing no further questions, at least I don't see any hands raised or questions, that will take us to administrative reports.
Trustee Mallory,
Yes, I'm sorry, did I miss your hand? Or
yeah, here my hand.
I just, you know,
I'm just raising
everybody.
I just wanted to congratulate Tammy on her appointment as a regional representative. I'm sure it's much appreciated, the knowledge and expertise that she has to share with the K-12 districts in this area. And there's quite a few of them, so that's quite a responsibility. And I just wanted to extend to her my congratulations.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Trustee Diggin, for bringing that up. I thought of that when I first went through our packet, and I neglected to say something. So my congratulations as well, Ms. Engman.
Thank you.
That takes us to our President Superintendent report, Dr. Flamer.
Thank you very much. I just have a couple verbal comments. First, I want to mention that I'm working with HSU and the Wiyot tribe to create a joint land acknowledgement statement, or two statements. And I want to share the draft long statement and the short version with the board today that Dr. Jackson and I and Aliyah Dunphy has provided some input on. And the long statement that we want to start reading at the beginning of meetings says this: we acknowledge that the land on which we are gathered today is unceded territory of the Wiyot people who continue to live and thrive on today. It is surrounded by the traditional and ancestral and present homeland of several indigenous nations, including the Hupa, Karuk, Matol, Talwa, Waliki, and Yurok that made up Humboldt County. And the short version is, we acknowledge that the land on which we're gathered today is unceded territory of the Wiyot people who continue to live and thrive on today. As next steps, Dr. Jackson will send both the long version and the short version through his constituent review process of whatever that looks like at HSU. And then it will come back to Ted Hernandez and I for another look at from our perspective. And the second comment, I just want to let the board know that I sent a letter to Dr. Frankovic and Dr. Ennis a few days ago outlining our instructional and operational plan for spring semester, just to keep them informed about what CR is planning and what we will move forward with. And that concludes my comments.
I'm really pleased to hear that you are reaching out. It doesn't surprise me, to our Department of Health, Public Health, to keep them informed. I think that's really important. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Any questions for President Fletcher? Hearing none. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I don't always have questions, but I just wanted to say the renderings of the Creative Arts Building as the attachments to Dr. Flamer's report were stunning. Really looking forward to the completion of that project.
Yeah, they are, aren't they? So that can take us to 5.2. Excuse me, 6.2. Our Vice President of Instruction, Dr. Angelina Hill. Dr. Hill, is there anything you'd like to add to your report or provide additional background?
Yeah, thank you. I apologize, my report was rather short. It was a busy week. So I did want to welcome back Trustee Capini. I think I was very new in the VP role, if even in the permanent role, when I last he was last on the board, and so I hope he sees some improvement in me. But at any rate, I just wanted to add that I think myself and a lot of us have been spending a lot of time participating in the various sessions that the Chancellor's Office has been putting out for us through the IEPI and the RP group and the Vision for Success Network. So I got that name wrong. You know, our Linda, our new network. So at any rate, they've been, the theme has been, and I know you probably have received similar emails, especially Trustee Biggin, from the board that you're a part of. But the theme is definitely against racism. And what I have been noticing, and I think some others at CR, we've been kind of talking about it, is the Chancellor's Office, I have the sense that some of the reasons why we're having such a hard time talking about this, and like while I was so impressed by your discussions at the beginning of this meeting, because I can tell you were so thoughtful about what this means, and is it, when you say against racism, what it's becoming clear to me is that when the Chancellor's Office says that there's an assumption there. They're making assumptions about our institutions. And so I just think it's important for me to I start to get sad if I start to think that, you know, as a college, that there's like racism running around the college, or, you know, we have a bunch of racist people running around the college. That starts to make me really sad. And so I think that there's kind of maybe an underlining assumption that the Chancellor's Office has when they use that term, and maybe they don't mean it, but that's like the way it comes across. And so I think that leads us to have weird conversations sometimes. I see it with the faculty and in meetings and stuff, where it's like one person's thinking it means this thing and another person's thinking it means this other thing. And so I just really appreciate how thoughtful I feel so lucky that you are my board. I talk to other people at other colleges, and I just feel really proud. So thank you for that. I also wanted to mention, I forgot to put this in my report, that I had the pleasure of, and it's been a little while now, but I had the pleasure of attending the Native American Day session that Aaliyah Dumpy put on. It was fantastic. And oh, Trustee Biggin was there as well. And I just think a lot of the work that's being done right now at the college to truly address, you know, equality and equity and inclusion and fairness, I just think that our diversity group is doing a fantastic, really meaningful work in this area. And so I wanted to, forgot to put it in my report, but I just wanted to thank Aaliyah Dunphy and her folks and President Flamer and all the good work that they're doing along those lines. And finally, I just wanted to speak a little bit to the discussion about the pandemic and why, you know, how this is impacting different areas of students disproportionately. And what we're seeing in talking to students, and we're gonna get data to back this. So this is an empirical thing that we can look into, but what we're noticing is that students who are more rural, who don't have the Wi-Fi signals, it's so difficult for them to take classes. And so I think there's a way where we can look at match zip codes to Wi-Fi. I don't know what's zip code. See, we'd have to, it's kind of complicated. But if we can match Wi-Fi coverage, cell service and Wi-Fi coverage to students' homes, and then track changes in their enrollment patterns, I think we would see a big effect, but like I said, it's complicated to figure that out. So I'll be working with our IR department to see if there's something that they can do, because then we'll have an idea of, you know, do we need more devices to get to them? I'm sort of thinking no, because we have way more devices than we need. But we just don't know how, like, hotspots don't work if you don't have any cell service, you know? So then, like, satellite, like we get satellite, get a grant to get satellite. But a lot of the tribes are working on that already and doing as much as they can to do that. So it's pretty complicated, but I think it's not, we shouldn't just give up on it. We should continue to pursue that. So that's I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Is there more?
Yeah, I thought I saw a question there, Trustee Kelly.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, we've been talking about board advocacy and, you know, this whole broadband issue, and then the way that the pandemic has kind of laid bare the fact that the infrastructure doesn't exist. I mean, we've been complaining about this since long before I moved here. I've heard people complain about broadband access. It kind of feels sometimes like many parts of Humboldt feel like a third world country when it comes to connectivity. And I wonder if there's a way that the board can lend some advocacy support to whatever direction the college gives us as they complete this research. Because I just feel like we've been dragging our feet on this problem for way too long. And not only in terms of like COVID, but just the ability for a student to be able to do deeper research to keep up with their homework in non-pandemic times. This is ridiculous.
I agree with you, but I also think that, you know, these are really new technologies. This Wi-Fi, I know we feel like it's been around forever, but it is pretty new technology. And, you know, with all of the smart homes that we've created and smart cars, and we don't know the impacts of the radiation of that at this point. And so to kind of introduce that into environments of people who might be very sensitive to it without really knowing what we're introducing, that kind of scares me a little bit. And not that it's up to me to decide, but it just seems like, you know, I was talking with our director of our KT site this week and the director of HOOPA, of education in HOOPA, and Erica. And they had a detector that they were measuring the radiation around our site, and it was very high, and they were feeling kind of impacted by it. So I know this sounds like weird stuff that, you know, there's no research on it, so I'm just maybe talking weird, but I just think it's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, well, even if our direction is for, you know, moving away from any kind of wireless signaling technology, then our commitment should be to live in person and you know, making sure that classes can happen to folks who are in these areas that aren't getting signal. I guess I'm just voicing support as a board member here that it is ridiculous that these issues are keeping students from learning during this time. I think it's disproportionately affecting Humboldt County and rural communities at large.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm trying to think of ways that we can move programming out into more rural locations that we can sustain, right? Because we have to be able to either subsidize it, get grants for it, or get apportionment for it. And so I'm trying to look to grants more and more to pay for it, or trying to get really, really creative to address exactly what you're frustrated about. Thank you.
Dr. Mallory, if I may add something to that, is Trustee Kelly, that's the perfect question for our education master plan process. Isn't whether we want to expand Wi-Fi or technology, but the fundamental question is, how do we expand access and success to every part of our district? That's the fundamental question, and that is really what we should hold as value, right? And so we are going to ask that question over the next 8-9 months of the Education Master Plan Committee in our community is, how do we expand access and success regardless of the venue? I don't think going completely online or predominantly online in the future is the answer that CR should go. I think it has to, that pendulum has to swing more balance between online and face-to-face, but what that looks like with the pandemic, we know what that looks like. But what do we do post-pandemic? That's really the fundamental question that we have to ask ourselves and find an answer for us to be able to survive and thrive in the future.
President Mullery?
Yes, Trustee Matthews.
Because we are talking with our Vice President of Instruction, I just wanted to have an opportunity to say, which was really under our consent agenda and the curriculum report, that I just want to voice appreciation for the fact that the faculty through curriculum approved doing the courses at Pelican Bay through correspondence, which I realize is really not what we want to do. It wouldn't have been before, and I'm sure it really isn't now. And but it was required in order to continue that program at all. And so I just want to acknowledge, the importance of having taken that step. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Matthews.
Trustee Mallory?
Yes, please, Trustee Biggin.
I just wanted to express my appreciation for the information on the credit for prior learning. And I wondered, with the task force that they've created, is there any chance that they're involving any students as part of that task force?
I think, Dr. Hill, that's a question for you if you're still there.
I'm sorry, what is the particular task force that you're referring to?
Well, the credit for prior learning task force.
Oh, yes. That's a good, yeah, definitely we could. The way that we're involving students right now is we're involving, we have a counselor, we have several people who work directly answering student questions all the time, and knowing, thinking at least they have knowledge of the various desires and needs of students, and so they're kind of experts acting on behalf of students at the table. But if you think that it would be helpful to have an actual student or two present, we can do that, certainly. We have so much trouble getting students to actually attend meetings when we put them on committees, and then I start to worry that it looks kind of like we're trying to say that we put students on there, but then not really have students on there. So that's the only reason why I get a little hesitant to do that, but I'm happy to do it. Maybe there's students who really want to attend right now.
Yeah,
I guess my
decision, and I don't think.
Okay, I don't mean to get into operations. It's just that as I listen to other districts, there's so much more student involvement at various levels than what we have in our district. And I'm concerned about that because I think the student's voice at the table is really important. And I've really appreciated Trustee Peters and the comments that she makes and the perspective that she shares with us. I'm excited about credit for prior learning. I heard about that in some webinars this summer, and they talked about credit for military experience and industry training and different things that would help students complete their degrees faster and increase our completion rates, which would increase our funding levels too.
I totally hear your concern about the student involvement, and please know that that's not it's not an issue with the administration. We've always tried to put students on committees, and we either don't get appointments, no students volunteer, or the students volunteer and then they don't show up. And I have not been able to figure out what to do about that. I think it's something to do with the rural nature of our college and trying to get students to actually show up. Maybe now that we're all online, it would be easier to get students to actually show up. I think I appreciate your suggestion, Trustee Biggin, or your concern, because I think we did get into kind of a pattern of like, oh, well, don't even bother putting a student on this because they're not going to show up. And then I feel like I'm going to be able to say like, oh, well, I had a student on it, but I shouldn't say that if the student never attended.
Thank you. Actually, I had a question, Dr. Hill, on the credit for prior learning, because it was on last week's trustee webinar. It was one of the topics, and we were actually asked to do an online survey response during the webinar. And I wasn't exactly sure just how much we are doing with that at this time. We have an administrative procedure, you're putting together a task force, but have we done much with credit for prior learning in the past?
Believe it or not, we're actually way ahead of, I met with the CIOs in our region, and myself and Shasta, but we were even farther along than Shasta, we're the farthest along with it. We already were working on an AP that is, did it make it to your level yet? I can't remember. No, it didn't. It was in draft in the Senate, and then we pulled it back because of this requirement to reevaluate. But we created a whole policy for your approval or review around veterans and CLEP and credit for prior learning for veterans. So we were one of the first colleges working on that, thanks to our evaluation specialist, Tatiana, who's on top of everything. She went to Curriculum Institute and was like, we have to do this. And then we had credit by exam. We used that for a number of years, primarily in healthcare. Like I believe it was in either our LVN or RN program. Students would take an exam to try to meet the some requirements, certain course requirements. And the issue with how we did, and we had those in all the CTE areas, not all, but many of the CTE areas. The problem with doing that we found was outside of like nursing, where those students, it works for a small subset of students. So it works for students who really need the credits to graduate, but they also don't want to take that degree and move it on to a university, because those credits don't articulate automatically to a 4-year. They only articulate within our college, right? We would have to do separate like MOUs or something, agreements with like HSU if we wanted this stuff to carry out and count with them. So yeah, and then with the other CTE areas, typically in those trades, they don't really care about getting a degree. They just want the skills to go get a job. And so they don't care about getting credit typically. And then we do it in a way with AP scores from the high schools, right? So they take AP exams. They can turn around and try to get credit from us for English, math, you know, or not, maybe not for all the various areas. And then we kind of, dual enrollment is almost like a type of credit for prior learning, but I mean, it's a little different. So yes, I think we've been pretty far along with this, trying to do it in the right way for students, because there's a way to do this that's really, really good for students, and then there's a way to do this that is protecting enrollments at your college or bringing in new enrollments. And that's what we're seeing the more urban areas be concerned about, protecting enrollments. And that leads to different types of policies than what we are looking at.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hill. We probably should move along here. I really appreciate your responding to our questions. Thank you. Let's move to 6.3. Vice President Morrison, is there anything you would like to add to your report or provide additional background?
The only thing I'd like to add is an update, AB 2884, and that's in relation to the expanded use of restricted lottery funds was approved by the governor last week. So I look forward to seeing the legal analysis and the details on that.
Thank you. Are there questions for Vice President Morrison? Based on President Flamer's report, you've been appointed to several committees. My congratulations. I guess that's congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, volunteer and or appointed, whatever you want to call it.
Well, I think that's really wonderful, you know, not only for you, but for the college. And it's so important to speak with others outside of our district. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Vice President Morrison? Hearing none or seeing none, I'll move to Executive Director of College Advancement and the Foundation, Mr. Coelho. Are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Hi, good to see you. Would you like to provide any additional background or add anything to your report?
I don't have any additional background to add at this time, but if anyone has any questions, I could answer.
Are there any questions for Mr. Coelho? Apparently your report was extremely thorough. There are no questions.
I never have a question, but you're selling out to Apple, Marty? Apple? Nah, just kidding.
Okay. Thank you, Marty. Thank you, Mr. Coelho.
Thanks a lot.
Well, we have no items to be discussed in closed session, so I have nothing to disclose. And obviously there's no public comment. So I think we are actually moving to adjourn this meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Thank you. We are adjourning this meeting at 2:53 p.m. on this Tuesday, October 6th. Thank you all for your participation. It was a good and important meeting.